International Motorsports Association's annual season opening Florida Trilogy is complete. After two of the world's toughest endurance tests at Daytona and Sebring, and sports car racing's richest event in Miami, the true contenders for the $1 million Camel GT Championship step up today. It's a battle of David and Goliath proportions. Goliath found in the form of Dan Gurney's All-American Racers Team Toyota. Gurney's Toyota Eagles have been quick since their debut, and they ride a streak of 10 straight victories dating back to last June. During that time, Juan Fangio became Camel GT champion. This season, he has already won twice, and today he is looking for the hat trick. His teammate is P.J. Jones, son of Indy 500 legend Parnelli Jones. A winner at the season opening Rolex 24 at Daytona, P.J., like his dad, gives no quarter, not even to his teammate.
Well, it's take no prisoners. You know, we're going to race each other as hard as we can race each other. As long as we, can keep each other out of trouble. But I want to beat him worse than I want to beat anybody else out on the track.
To Toyota's Goliath, a group of privateer Davids are led by Wayne Taylor. The expatriate South African gave close chase in Miami and will push the Toyotas to the limit today in an effort to break their winning streak.
In Miami, we qualified third and was the only team that really could have given the Toyotas a run. And I think now this weekend we're a lot closer. So I think that this weekend you could find a non-Toyota winning this event.
Can Toyota push their total to 11 straight, or will they be struck down on the high banks of Atlanta Motor Speedway? ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. The way it used to be when racing teams came to Atlanta was that the road racers headed north and the oval racers south to Atlanta Motor Speedway. No longer. Welcome to America's newest road racing circuit, the new Atlanta Motor Speedway, site of the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to the Atlanta suburb of Hampton, Georgia. Now, it's not just the move north from Florida that makes this truly the beginning of the Camel GT season. Today, there are new rules that come into effect governing the fastest road racing machines in North America, and here they are. The fuel flow during pit stops has been slowed to a minimum of 26 seconds for a full load of 100 liters. All of the GTP cars have had their minimum weights raised by 50 pounds, a fact accommodated easily for most teams by new rule number 3, the end of the carbon fiber brakes. The super efficient and super expensive brakes. We're back to iron discs that will lengthen the braking distances. Finally, a rule directed right at the heart of the all-conquering Toyota team, a choking down of the air restrictor that governs the flow of air into the engines. For more on what that means to the Toyota team, let's get down to trackside and pit reporter Marty Reed.
Thanks, Bob. IMSA has put a new airflow restrictor right in front of the turbo for the Toyotas. This is what it looks like. The black ring is the old 54 millimeter version. The silver part on the inside, that's the difference, the 52 millimeter. It's about a 1/10 of an inch difference. It decreases the horsepower by about 70. The one thing the question mark is, as far as Toyota is concerned, is they're not sure whether or not they can go the distance because they've never tested the motor under this configuration. Bob?
All right, thank you, Marty. In fact, there's been a lot of motor troubles for the Toyota team this weekend, but consider also the plight of some of the privateers. How about Canadian David Tennyson? During practice on Saturday, Tennyson suddenly lost his power steering. It became worse when a hose broke and sprayed scalding oil from that power steering unit onto his legs. Tennyson was treated for second-degree burns, but he is strapped into his cockpit and ready to go again today. Another man having some problems you've already met, Wayne Taylor, but his problems came during the more critical hour of qualifying. For more on that, now let's meet our other pit reporter for the day's race. Here's Rick DeBrule.
Well, Bob, do you ever have one of those weekends where nothing goes right? That's the kind of weekend that Wayne Taylor's been having. They tested here, thought they were going to do so well. Then on Thursday, they blew an engine. Friday, they launched a gearbox. Yesterday, during qualifying, the front bodywork came off. They ended up at the back of the pack. This morning, during the warm-up, they had an oil leak and then a misfire. It's just been one of those weekends. We've got to ask Wayne Taylor. I guess the question is, have you fixed everything?
Well, I hope so. I made a big mistake this morning. I spun it off the guys that fixed all the other problems we'd had all week. And as you see, I'm at the back of the grid and I've got a lot of work to do.
Wayne Taylor hoping that he's used up all his bad luck. Bob?
Okay, thank you, Rick, and we all wish Wayne Taylor well today. Joining me to call the action, ESPN road racing analyst David Hobbs. David, new rules, new racetrack. It's a whole new game here in Atlanta.
Well, that's right, Bob. Normally, when they come to the mainland off the Florida Peninsula in April, the drivers tend to think of this as the main meet of the season. They've got all the difficult races behind them, Daytona, Sebring, and Miami. But today is going to be a very difficult race for teams and drivers. First of all, the track. Nobody knows how the track's going to stand up for an hour-and-a-half race. And, of course, the rule changes to the cars is going to make quite a considerable difference. The right side tyres here are obviously going to take a pasting anyway. What's that extra 50 pounds going to do to these cars and their right side tyres? And that leads us to pit stops. The pit stop obviously has got to be orchestrated correctly because of the new fuel filling restriction. That makes that pit stop even more critical. And of course for Toyota themselves, they've got their new restrictor plates in the turbocharger. How is this going to affect the longevity of the engine? Well, the first time they're going to be able to really find out is during the course of today's race. So they've got a lot of unanswers coming up, Bob.
And it should be great fun to watch. In a moment, we'll introduce the field, but right now, let's take a closer look at what could be the deciding factor in today's event, the brand new road course here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Across the start-finish line with Bob Earl as he comes into turn 1 at about 150 mile an hour approach. Very tight, downhill, 24-degree banking. He's got a compass there, into the chicane. Right, left, right, back up onto the banking again. That turn 1's a bit rough and ready because unfortunately the wet spring here didn't allow the ground to settle properly. Down on the back straight on the NASCAR circuit now. Back up to 150 miles an hour and into turn 2. We're going to see a lot of overtaking here this afternoon. A wide approach going to make people brave, but it's a tight, long corner, 180-degree corner as he comes into the infield here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Up to the turn 5 complex. This is very exciting. They've got a very fast approach, and the final apex here, the corner really tightens up on them. Swooping along now behind the pits over this crest, a blind brow there, going to be difficult to overtake. They come down to turn 7. This is also a very tight right-hander down to 3rd gear for this one, and they've got to be very careful here. You can see the apex there is very muddy, and on the left there, the ground is extremely rough. They're not going to want to drive off there in these low cars. Down to the final corner, back up onto the banking here. Again, it's a little bit bumpy, and a terrific bump there as they go up onto the 24-degree banking, go up through the gearbox at full speed as they go around NASCAR's turn 3 and 4. It's also pretty bumpy for these stiffly sprung road racing cars. They come up to the start-finish line to complete yet another lap of the 2.5-mile Atlanta Motor Speedway road course.
All right, thank you, David. A super speedway road course combination, always a compromise. Believe me, folks, you do not want to miss this first corner. It is like falling off a cliff. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Camel GT Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta is brought to you by Toyota Motorsports, where technology on a fast track is built into every Toyota. By Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Bud Light. If you want great taste that won't fill you up and never lets you down, make it a Bud Light. We'll be back to introduce the starting grid and take the green flag in round 4 of the IMSA Camel GT season. Stay with us. Back at Atlanta Motor Speedway, engines have fired in preparation for rolling the cars out for the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. It's a combination, of course, of the full-blown Camel GTB cars and the smaller, lighter weight, less powerful Camel Lights. For more on the Camel Light situation, once again, here's Rick DeBrule.
Well, the Lights division is shaping up as a battle between the Acura Spices. 2 Acura Spices. The first is the number 49 car, Parker Johnstone. This car has new bodywork this weekend. As a result, it's going much faster. The second car is the one right behind it. That's the number 9 car of Bob Earl. It's the same basic type of car, different driver. These two have been trading fast laps all weekend. As a result, they had some problems yesterday in this number 9 car. They think they've got that solved. It looks like we should have ourselves a whale of a race in the Lights division.
16 cars in all have begun to roll off. Now let's take a look at the way they'll line up for this 4th event of the Camel GT season with the help of our BF Goodrich starting grid. On the pole, despite all the problems in the Toyota camp this weekend, P.J. Jones from Rolling Hills, California, who lapped Atlanta Motor Speedway at an average of 124.81 miles an hour, a new track record. Next to him, the Camel GT champion, his teammate Juan Manuel Fangio. P.J. leads in points, Juan in victories this year. Row 2, the challenge from Porsche, the 962 of Manuel Reuter, sharing with fellow German John Witter. Next to them, Mr. Porsche, Bob Wallach of Strasbourg, France, sharing with German Ronnie Meixner. On row 3, David Tennyson will attempt to go all the way in his Chevy-powered Spice, despite those burns suffered yesterday. Next to him will be the Nissan of Giampiero Moretti of Italy, sharing with 2-time World Sports Car champ Derek Bell. Row 4 has our Camel Lights pole sitters, Parker Johnstone and Dan Marvin in Acura-powered Spice. Next to them, the Daytona winners, Tim McAdam of Vail, Colorado, and Jim Downing in a Buick-powered kudzu chassis. Row 5 will be Bob Earl from Purcellville, Virginia, along with Bob Shader in a V6 Acura Spikes. Next to them will be the Mazda-powered kudzu of Jim Pace from Jackson, Mississippi, sharing with Californian Mike Sheehan. On row 6, Andy Evans, Francois Migaud, and Fermin Velez in the new generation of IMSA racers, a Buick-powered kudzu open cockpit chassis. Next to them will be IndyCar driver John Jones, along with Neil Jamieson and Bill Klubine in a Ford-powered Alba car. Row 7 will be Anthony Lazzaro and Sam Shalala in a Porsche-powered Fab car. Next to them, Ed DeLong, Bobby Brown, and Chris Ivey will share a Buick-powered Taiga. Further back, the same trio of drivers have another Buick-powered Taiga. They'll be getting plenty of seat time this weekend. And last on the grid, Wayne Taylor in his Chevy GTP. After problems at qualifying, he should be fun to watch come through this field. As you heard Wayne Taylor say, he's got his work cut out for him. There he is. One of the quickest cars in the field will start dead last, and we'll be watching him all the way. Now let's take a look at our onboard cameras. David Tennyson will be carrying one. There's the look right out the front as he begins to warm the tires, working the infield portion of this racetrack. We also have a face cam. You can see he's got the head restraint to keep that helmet from moving around under the very high G-forces of this racetrack. In our Camel Lights pole-sitting car, this is Parker Johnstone, the two-time class champion in Acura Spice, bumping up onto that 24-degree banking. We also have a face cam. There is Parker hard at work in his office. And we have one other car carrying an onboard camera, a front look out of Bob Earl's Acura Spice. The engines for this car, by the way, prepared by Parker Johnstone's Comtech Acura team. And they have been treated very, very fairly. The car is very closely matched. Jim Sidley has the green flag out. He waves it, and one of the Porsches dives for the inside.
Whoa, look at the way that Toyota outbraked it into turn 1. That was, in fact, Manuel Reuter, I believe, in the number 7 car, who shot through into the lead there, only to be blasted by on the way into that corner with the Toyota, iron brakes and all.
Now onto the backstretch, well up over 170 miles an hour, braking hard now, diving downhill, little bit of banking to this corner, 180 degrees.
Interesting thing, the sun's come out here, the temperature is at least 20 degrees hotter than it's been all weekend. We've had a few problems with this track breaking up in practice, so it's going to be interesting to see how it lasts this afternoon for an hour and 45 minutes. And now, especially, as it's got all this extra heat coming out of the sunshine here in Atlanta.
E.J. Jones leads Manuel Reuter, followed by Juan Fangio.
Look at that car bouncing through the infield. They're also going to have, there's Wayne Taylor coming up through the field.
He's going around the World Sports Car machine, one of the newest cars in the series. There's Wayne Taylor in his Dankas-powered Chevrolet GTP. Used to be known as the Chevy Intrepid a few years back.
Now, one of the problems here, they've had a very wet spring and they couldn't get some of the work finalized on this track, and you'll see at all the apexes, a lot of that Georgia clay. And again, over the next hour and 45 minutes, that's going to spread itself thinly over the track and get very, very greasy offline.
Round to complete lap 1. P.J. Jones goes into the history books as the first leader of the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta at Atlanta Motor Speedway. There is Wayne Taylor, who continues to move his way up through the field. He should be up into the top 10 within a couple of laps.
I think he's 9th now.
There's been some exciting news about this team during the course of the weekend. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. He rockets by the Acura of the Camel Lights pole sitter Parker Johnstone, who has been passed by the number 63 machine
of Jim Pace, isn't it? Is that Jim Pace in that green and blue car there? Yellow and blue?
Now, that was Jim Downing's car. The number 63 machine is Downing, sharing with Tim McAdam today. Tim McAdam started the car. Winners at Daytona this year, Sebring winners in the 12 hours last year. You watch Wayne Taylor rocking around with that full-throated 6.5-liter Chevy V8. Bouncing over those apexes you discussed, David. Right there's another one.
And you can see the dust being kicked up, and that's going to become a problem as the afternoon goes on.
Let's pick up the battle for second place as the Porsche of Manuel Reuter, a winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, driving for Mercedes a couple of seasons ago, just begins to draw away a bit from the Toyota. The Toyota team says they are severely down on horsepower to the Porsches, and some 18 miles an hour short of what the Porsches can do in a straight line.
They say that restrictor, which we saw in the hands of Marty Reed there, it certainly doesn't look much. Took away 70 horsepower, and now they're about 170 horsepower less than the Porsche. I find that somewhat difficult to believe. They are a little bit lighter, and of course a much more advanced car. The Porsche 962, really based on a design that's now 11 years old, and hanging in there very well in the hands of old Manuel Reuter.
Now there's Wayne Taylor once again. He has slowed down. Down onto the infield course he goes. He's going to be passed by the battle for first place in lights between Tim McAdam in that blue and yellow car, the Kudzu, with Buick, 3.4-liter Buick power. Just behind him, the V6, 3-liter Acura. Big problems for Wayne Taylor. What a tough break. Now this is the battle for second place. Once again, Reuter in the white Porsche with the black tail on the left. On the right, the number 99 Toyota Eagle Mark III of Juan Fangio. You can see the Porsche pull away. So many strategic variables at place in this contest, with the new weights, with the new brakes, with the new engine restrictions on the Toyota.
Look how quick that Toyota is through that tricky chicane, though. The advanced aerodynamics and suspension on that car helping him a lot through that very tricky first chicane, but certainly losing out a little bit on these back straight and, of course, the front straight here under the booth.
Diving down onto the infield. Meanwhile, Wayne Taylor is in the pits. There's obviously a problem down there. Marty Reed is standing by.
Well, guys, as Wayne Taylor brings the Danka Chevrolet into the pits, it is power steering, so the back end is going to come off. And ironic that the two Chevrolets in the GTP category, remember we talked about it in the beginning of the show, as far as what happened to David Tennyson. He had a power steering problem where the line actually ended up burning his leg. That is not the problem here, as far as there's no leak into the cockpit area, but they are going to be going to work underneath here, so looks like Taylor's day could be a problem.
You see the engine hood going back on. Perhaps Wayne Taylor can get back into the battle. Meanwhile, P.J. Jones is out front for Toyota. We'll be back with more action from the new Atlanta Motor Speedway. Stay with us. On the 24-degree banking, P.J. Jones of Rolling Hills, California, and Dan Gurney's All-American Racers Toyota team leads the way in the first Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. Bob Marshall, David Hobbs with you. Running in second place, a great battle between Manuel Reuter in a Porsche, followed by Juan Fangio in the Toyota, then the Porsche of Bob Wallach. Behind them, David Tennyson, Giampiero Moretti, Parker Johnstone, Tim McAdam, Wayne Taylor, and Bob Earl follow.
I think that young Fangio's got a problem. He's slowing up because Bob Wallach is starting to catch up behind him now.
99 car. Here's Fangio. You see the Porsche up ahead. Manuel Reuter pulling away. The Camel Lights battle now features Tim McAdam out front. Parker Johnstone follows. Bob Earl in third. As we mentioned at the top of the show, this one is going to seesaw back and forth all day long. Tim McAdam from Vail, Colorado, would like to dedicate his race today to the memory of Chip Meade, a class winner who died tragically in an airplane crash 3 weeks ago in the Altamont Pass, California. There are several cars carrying messages in memory of Chip Meade here at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend.
Well, Tim McAdam in the yellow and blue car here, the number 63, swooping through turn one, is putting a lot of distance between himself and our usual hero, Parker Johnston, in the 49 car, who's now running third in this class behind the 9 car. So the 49 car, here we see him coming around the banking. And we just saw the Tim McAdam car go through turn one. Well in front. Down to turn two. Pretty bumpy through here.
There's Parker Johnstone, the two-time defending class champion, the all-time leader in fast laps in the class. He claimed every pole in the Camel Lights division last year as the Acuras absolutely dominated. Down in the pit lane, Rick DeBrule has more.
Well, Parker Johnstone has already learned the first lesson today, which is don't be too overanxious. He was moving up, doing very well, sitting in the front of the pack, but went into one corner, basically overcooked it. As a result, fell back a little bit. Now he's trying to make things back up, kind of get back in that rhythm. By the way, his teammates say, and if you know Parker Johnstone, you'll understand this, he has been talking non-stop on the radio the entire time. He's basically doing play-by-play for his crew to hear.
Parker Johnstone.
Probably say, Mike, Comtech, BFG radio. It's not BFG radio anymore, but...
Parker Johnstone, always true to his sponsors, as a good racing driver should be. Notice the new bodywork on this car. Very sleek, very swoopy. The team tried different bodywork variations last year without much success. This year, this is the new Spice bodywork with that narrow cockpit area, a bubbled cockpit. It is a very, very sleek package, and they find that it makes almost 2 seconds a lap difference in their times. Now, let me correct the running order. Just ahead of him, that's the Acura Spice of Bob Earl. Parker Johnstone about to take back second place. Ooh. So, he takes a little nudge there under braking.
Oh, that was a bit close. And both those cars have got the, as you say, the new narrow cockpit, the bubble cockpit. And in fact, David Tennyson's car, the 19 car, they managed to squeeze Camel Light bodywork onto that car. 98 lapping the lead cars in Camel Light already. Ooh, what an overpowering display of power. P.J. Jones in the Toyota.
Just over 10 minutes into this hour and 45-minute race. Now, these lights cars, in fact, are beginning to close up now on Tim McAdam, the class leader, so there's going to be a three-way battle in lights before too long. P.J. Jones having to wait his turn to get up onto the banking. Watch the speed differential right here.
That's a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged going past a 3-liter V6.
Now this is the battle for second place. Manuel Reuter in that Porsche 962 being trailed by the 99 Toyota of Juan Fangio. 99 car may be having a troublesome beginning to this race. Marty Reed can tell us more from the pit lane.
Well, guys, I talked to Dan Gurney when you said you noticed something wrong. I said, Dan, is there a problem with the 99? He said, yeah. He says, yeah, Juan's motor's trying to breathe through the size of a hole of a hummingbird's rectum. His quote.
Well, so's P.J. Jones, and his car seems to be going all right. Give us a break.
All right,
don't say you fell for that one, Marty.
Juan Fangio now closing up. Manuel Reuter. The Porsche 962 actually appeared as a 956 in Europe, then came to America in 1962 in the hands of Mario and Michael Andretti of the 24 Hours of Daytona. Since then, it has won races beyond measure. It has taken championships in the hands of men like the late Al Holbert. And here it is, still racing and obviously competing well with the newest technology in Camel GT racing, the Toyota Eagle Mark III.
Of course, the Porsche, which is a twin turbo for the V6, they went through all this restriction downsize business a few years ago. They've been through all sorts of restrictions on their turbochargers themselves, so they know exactly how they feel.
Now watching all of this from behind, here comes the fourth place car, the number 6 machine being driven by Bob Wallach, sharing with German Ronnie Meixner. Ronnie Meixner drove in the GT Invitational class of the 24 Hours of Daytona. He's familiar with Porsches, but he has no experience to speak of in these prototype 962s.
So I wouldn't be expecting to see him get much seat time.
Bob Wallach, not a man who likes to get out of the car in these short races also. Now look at the gap back to the 5th place car. The front 4 just racing away. Now here comes David Tennyson with that little extra sunburn on his shins and all. This also brand new Spice bodywork, widened a little bit at the fenders to accommodate the larger wheel and tire combinations used in the GTP ranks.
Yeah, they literally squeezed the Camel Light body onto the GTP car here. As you said, it had to widen up in places here. Oh, great view on the inside there as we go rushing through the infield.
Oh! Smoke out of the back of the 7 car. 99, Fangio goes around.
And Bob Wallach goes around.
Oh, Manuel Reuter, you can see it coming out the back as they come back onto the banking.
Well, perhaps they were running too much boost.
Big tire mark there on the left side of the car, too, just below the 3 stripes. Manuel Reuter limps around. No doubt he will dive for the pit lane. He's going to be serviced by Yost Racing, perhaps the best-known Porsche privateer in all the world. Many times winner at Le Mans. Now here's a look at him getting past.
Has he in fact got a left front tire gone flat? Or was that engine smoke or that's engine smoke?
Looks like engine smoke coming out the back.
I'm not sure whether it may be tire smoke.
Well, we'll watch him as he comes down the pit lane. He is there now. Rick de Bruyne is standing by.
Well, that's right. We're still not quite sure what happened down here in the pit area. Apparently, the left front tire did go down. There doesn't appear to be any work going on the back of the car. They're simply doing what really looks like, at this point, a routine stop. Maybe the smoke you saw was simply coming off of the tire as it was rubbing against the bodywork. He's back out.
I hate it when you're right, Hobbs.
Sickening, isn't it?
Well, he'll come out a long ways down, but he does have a full load of fuel, we can assume, and that may change pit stop strategy the rest of the way for Manuel Reuter and John Winter, his co-driver. Meanwhile, we now have a Toyota 1-2 as P.J. Jones leads Juan Fangio. Bob Wallach is 3rd, followed by David Tennyson in 4th, and Manuel Reuter maybe as high as 5th.
What could have happened there, that tire mark that you saw on his left side, it could have wiped off the valve stem of the tire. Whoever's wheel it was that rubbed down the side of him could have clipped the valve stem and let the tire down. Disappointing that, because he was hanging on really well there. He'll never catch him up, but he was doing really well to hang in there.
Never say never in racing, particularly with all the uncertainties we have here today at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Actually, Daniel Sexton Gurney had
I'll let you finish that story in just a second, David. We've got to take a quick timeout. We'll be back. There's a great look at what the driver sees here in Atlanta. P.J. Jones rockets around Atlanta Motor Speedway. He has led since the green flag in round 4 of the Camel GT season. We've got great Sunday night baseball action coming your way here on ESPN. Andy Van Slyke leads the Pittsburgh Pirates against Darryl Strawberry and the Los Angeles Dodgers at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California. Exclusive national coverage coming your way tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live here on ESPN. Great drama already here at the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. P.J. Jones is your race leader. Wayne Taylor, who started from the back of this field and rocketed all the way up into the top 8, is now struggling with what we're told is a power steering problem. Tough break for Wayne Taylor. Now, P.J. Jones on the 98 Toyota coming up behind Giampiero Moretti in that beautifully turned out Momo Nissan. A moment ago, the Momo car was doing battle with Manuel Reuter in the Porsche, but he has now pulled away. It is a Toyota 1-2. P.J. Jones leads Juan Fangio, followed by Bob Wallach, David Tennyson, Manuel Reuter. Then the car you just saw, Moretti. Now there is the number 49 of Parker Johnstone from Redmond, Oregon, running second in the Camel Lights class right now. And as you can see, he's got a lot of open track.
Tim McAdam is in front of him still in the Kudzu Buick, giving a good display this afternoon here. Obviously hoping to hang on for that win, which he so desperately wants to commemorate his old buddy Chip Mead with, who so tragically died a couple of weeks ago in an airplane crash. So a good race there in Camel Lights, and unusual for Parker Johnstone to be running in that second spot.
Indeed it is. Parker Johnstone has been the Camel Lights class for the last 2 seasons, and the way Jim Downing, Tim McAdam's teammate, was for the first 3 seasons of the class. Parker Johnstone will hand over to Dan Marvin later on in the race. The Camel Lights teams must use 2 drivers, and each driver must run at least 25% of the leader's distance. That's a mandatory rule in the category. There's a rise we talked about a little bit earlier. That's really got to put your stomach right up around your heart. Heavy braking and downshifting.
This is a very deceptive little bit of track too. The road swings slightly left before that right-hand sweep there. Now a long left. And then, of course, a severe jolt as one transfers from the flat at the bottom of the banking up onto that 24-degree banking. They shoot right to the top on impetus and acceleration, and then they use the 24-degree banking as a hill to come downhill to give themselves a bit of a shot onto this back straight. There's one thing about these cars, a bit of a psychological difference between these and the NASCAR cars, of course. The stockers around here, the driver sits on the left side of the car, being American driver cars with left-hand steering, so they've got the whole car between them and the wall. These guys, the driver, in a much more fragile car, is, of course, sitting right up by that wall when they run down these back straight and into these tight corners. And the wall, I mean, it's right there.
Gives them a good close look at it.
That's a very close look.
As you saw, Parker Johnstone with 2 Camel Lights titles to his credit. Just 2 of 6 national titles he has won in 4 different classes since back in 1985. Truly a great racing talent. The all-time leader in Camel Lights class victories with 20, looking for 21 today. Very distinctive engine note to that V6 Acura. Now there is the class leader right now from Vail, Colorado, Tim McAdam. Watch the interval. There is Parker Johnstone in second. And just entering the back of your picture as Parker made that corner, about the same interval back to the 3rd place car in the class, Bob Earl.
So they're all pretty evenly matched up, that group, into this race by about 25 minutes now. So no one's giving up in that class at all.
Now let's climb aboard car number 9 with Bob Earl, formerly employed by the Nissan team. The factory effort in Camel GT Racing before they left the category this year.
See what I mean about the wall?
Absolutely. You don't need to convince me. I wonder if that extremely curved windshield changes the visual effect, especially up on this banking. The drivers actually cannot see all the way through the turn. You have to lean forward, if you could, strapped into that cockpit, to actually look out the top of the windshield and see where the turn goes. Up to about 150 miles an hour, and then hard on the brakes. You can hear them whine. Sliding through the infield. Everybody has a different line on just about every corner of this racetrack.
They do, don't they? Absolutely incredible, really. coming into the turn 5 complex, and right behind him, is that the number 7? Is that Reuter or is that Bob?
That's Manuel Reuter.
That's Reuter. Right behind Reuter is 98 car of P.J. Jones, who's about to lap Reuter. He wouldn't have found it that easy if Reuter hadn't had that flat tyre. Now then, the Porsche guys and P.J. Jones had a bit of a run-in on Friday during practice, so it'll be interesting to see just how easily old Reuter gives up this. It's not a position, obviously, he's about to be lapped, but he might make life difficult for young Mr. Jones.
We've had confirmation that, in fact, it was nothing more than a flat tire on Reuter's car. Now, Wayne Taylor back in the pits. Keep in mind, he's trying to deal with a power steering problem. We'll see whether they take the engine bonnet off the back of the car, and it looks like that's what they're going to do. That's always bad news with these cars. That means a long stop is coming up for Wayne Taylor. And notice they have to take off those wheel spats that provide extra aerodynamic effect in order to get the engine bonnet off the back of the car. They immediately go right to the firewall, looking for the problem they're having with their steering. Good look there at that 6.5-liter engine. Rick de Bruyne is down there standing by.
Well, once again, it seems to be a continuation of that same problem. Now they're going in, working on the throttle actuator right there, trying to see if they can get some movement out of it. Maybe it's a new problem that has cropped up. As a result, Wayne Taylor, it looks like they're unbuckling him. Mike Away, the crew chief, has given the word that Wayne Taylor is now climbing out of the car. And unfortunately, a race that he thought he was going to do so well in, his day has come to an end. We'll talk to him in just a moment.
Short day for Wayne Taylor. That is really too bad. Meanwhile, Tim McAdam, the leader in the Camel Lights class, about to be overtaken by the overall race leader, just like that. P.J. Jones puts a lap on the leader in the Camel Lights class. We'll be back with more from Atlanta Motor Speedway. Back at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. Bob Varsha, David Hobbs with you. Rick de Bruyne and Marty Reed are patrolling the pits. And on the point, P.J. Jones, who was to begin his NASCAR Winston Cup career back in March here at Atlanta Motor Speedway, but was snowed out in the Big Eastern Storm of 1993. He went on to drive well at Sebring, and now he leads this race and looks to be ready to lap the 4th place car of David Tennyson within a very short while. Now let's get down to the pit lane. Marty, Rick, what's going on?
Well, Bob, we're down here with Wayne Taylor, and at the beginning of the broadcast, we talked about the fact that we hope you'd used up all your bad luck. Obviously, you hadn't. What finally put you out?
Well, something that's never happened before. The power steering broke after 5 laps. We replaced the belt, and it broke again, and then the water temperature went up. And then finally, the throttle jammed down the back straight. So we just thought it was time to park the car. It's not been a good weekend.
We can only hope you've used up all your bad luck for the rest of the season.
Well, I think I've used it all up for now and for next year.
Wayne Taylor out of the race.
Wayne Taylor, not only the driver for that team, he is the president of the team, Danka Motorsports. His CEO, Dan Doyle, is on hand this weekend to watch his man in action. A premature conclusion for the Danka Motorsports team and Wayne Taylor. Meanwhile, P.J. Jones continues to look for Toyota's 11th straight victory in Camel GT competition. That would be the second longest in the GTP era, that is from 1979 to the present in Camel GT racing. The Porsche 962 won 16 straight in 1985 and 86. The longest winning streak, the Porsche 935 Turbo, not technically a GTP car, won 20 straight races in 1979, 80, and 81. In the Camel Lights category, Tim McAdam continues to lead Parker Johnstone, but Johnstone beginning to close it up just a bit. And behind him is Bob Earl, 3rd in class. That's going to be a battle to watch all day long. There is the gap back to the 2nd place car of Parker Johnstone. Let's go on board with Parker, looking ahead to the class leader. Parker has been very quick on the infield portion. Let's see if he closes up at all. The Buick, with a little bit more displacement, able to pull away on the high banks. Parker Johnstone has it trimmed back.
Through that very tricky infield. Now they're coming up to turn 7, which is a right-hander, but as you can see, there's a little left-hand flick approach to it as you're hard on the brakes for this right-hander. This makes that a very tricky little infield corner. And as you can see, the infield wanders around there, and you've got to stay on it, because if you get off, that grass and gravel there is very, very rough indeed.
You saw 7th place for Parker Johnstone. That's actually 7th place overall in the race. The battle for the Camel Lights lead was is the battle for 6th place overall in this contest. Right now it's P.J. Jones, followed by Juan Fangio, then Bob Wallach, then David Tennyson, then Manuel Reuter, and then the cars we've been watching right there.
While we were on board then with Parker Johnstone, you could see that that Georgia clay had started to get either on the outside or the inside or both of his windscreens. Of course, they direct air to the inside of these screens in case it rains, so his vision and everybody else's for that matter could be getting worse.
Here comes the kudzu chassis of Tim McAdam. Rick DeBrule has more on their situation in the pits.
Well, Tim McAdam actually had kind of an eventful weekend. They blew an engine on Friday, and then yesterday, during one of the sessions, during the qualifying session, he was going into turn 1, and the rear suspension gave out. Literally bounced the car up into the air, turned it around. He said he was very lucky he didn't hit anything, but as a result, it's pretty exciting to consider how well they're doing right now in light of what kind of weekend they've had.
Maybe one of our intrepids could find out what happened to the Bell Momo Moretti car. It stopped for a long time in the pits. It looked like it came in with a flat tire, but they seem to be a long time just sort of looking at it.
Flat tires would not be unusual on a new racing circuit like this, particularly one where they're putting a wheel off as often as they do. This kudzu chassis, as you see the gap back to the 2nd place car of Parker Johnstone, built in the shops of Jim Downing right here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's named kudzu, which is a weed that grows down here in the southeastern United States, brought to this country about 100 years ago to serve as quick-growing fodder for farm animals. And the story down here in the Atlanta area is you can actually watch this stuff grow. Kudzu is quite a...
springing into life this weekend, I noticed.
Quite a plant there. That's right. If you've ever been in the southeastern United States and you see trees and phone poles and things like that overgrown with what looks like ivy, that is kudzu. Very dear to the heart of Jim Downing, so he named his car after the plant. Now there is the Spice chassis of Parker Johnstone. There is the race leader, the 98 of P.J. Jones, who says all bets are off on the team now. Juan has a championship. P.J. wants one. He may be a Winston Cup driver on the high banks of Atlanta Motor Speedway sometime in the very near future. But right now, he's leading the way for Dan Gurney's Toyota team. Stay with us. Off the banking and onto pit lane comes the number 98 Toyota of race leader P.J. Jones, rocketing down the pit lane, down into the Toyota pits. We have a clock in the upper right-hand corner monitoring the action. Marty Reed is there.
Yeah, guys, we used to have to talk real fast because this crew could do it in about 16 seconds. But now with the fuel restrictions, it should take about an average of 24 to 26 seconds, and fuel will be the last thing that goes in. You can see everything's done. They're ready to go. The clock's still running. Up to 23 and counting. They're trying to get every ounce of fuel. I could feel like I write a book. That's chapter 1.
28.4 seconds. Let's hope they got enough fuel in to carry him the rest of the way. We have less than an hour and 15 minutes remaining in this contest. He might be able to make it. At any rate, he has dropped to 3rd on the racetrack, but he is the first of the top cars to make that all-important pit stop.
I guess the interesting thing is, will Manuel Reuter make it to the end of the race? With that stop he had early on, I somehow doubt it, but it's going to be pretty nip and tough. Incidentally, I noticed that Manuel Reuter is winding in David Tennyson in the 19 car slowly but surely, and just in a few more laps he'll pass him, and of course Tennyson will have to stop pretty soon to fuel himself anyway.
There is Juan Fangio, the Camel GT champion, originally from Balcarce, Argentina, now living in Miami, Florida. He's had a busy week. Just last weekend, Juan Fangio won a 12-hour race on the monster circuit at Bathurst in Australia, a production car race driving a Toyota MR2. Now he's here in the southeastern United States. He leads the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta, and he is on pit lane. Once again, standing by in the Toyota pits, Marty Reed.
Well, we'll get a clock on Juan and his crew. 28 seconds is the time to beat, and I'm sure the tire guys will do it. It really is strange because it's hard for us to get used to the fact that we were dealing with 16-second pit stops, and now you've got all this extra time. Must be a real dilemma for the driver, just sitting there and saying, oh, please, guys, come on, get me out of here. I need some time. But this really has been designed as an equalizer by IMSA for all teams. And it so far is working because it's another 27-second stop.
And off he goes in a cloud of tire smoke and a hearty hi-oh silver.
Now, we've already heard Dan Gurney's opinion of these restrictor plates, which is obviously not very high at the moment. But his engine man, of course, has got even less opinion of him, because although they were prepared to do it, what they don't want is the fact that apparently IMSA has got somewhat of an open-ended promise on further restrictions. So if they completely annihilate the field again today in spite of that restrictor, they may find it's even smaller another week.
There is Bob Wallach, the new race leader, driving that Porsche 962, flat six, twin turbo, water cooled, making about 700 horsepower. Hard to believe this is a car, the base model of which debuted over a decade ago in Camel GT racing. Considering the pace at which technology advances in motorsports, that is an eternity.
Fitzpatrick and I tested one of those, a 956 back at Willow Springs in the spring of 1983. In fact,
Bob Wallach has driven these cars most of that time. You'll see the gap back now to the second place 98 of P.J. Jones. See also Giampiero Moretti in the Momo Nissan.
The Nissan holding on pretty well down that back straight, but boy, oh boy, those Toyotas, steel brakes or what, they certainly have got awesome stopping power into both these slow corners at the end of these long, fast straights. Absolutely incredible stopping power.
Bob Wallach goes underneath the 10 Camel Lights car of Ed DeLong from Ontario, Canada. Bob Wallach has 9 Camel GT victories, including some epic contests in the heat in Miami, Florida. I remember once Bob going solo for 2 hours in the heat at Miami, had to be poured out of the race car, but he did win the race.
He's a bit of an Ironman, young Bob. Did ski for the French ski team and also an Olympic cyclist.
Down to the pits now, Marty Reed.
Well, 5th place, the Denon Racing team with David Tennyson, the very sore right area on his leg, the burn marks, and so far so good. We're checking tire wear on that right rear end, and so far nothing significant. I've looked at both Toyotas, and now I'm looking at the Tennyson's right rear. Things look to be very well. The temperature here in the 60s, so no major problems so far. And these guys, again, will be waiting for the fuel flow. So the great equalizer so far is working.
Great engine howl. Now this is not a 6.5 liter like Wayne Taylor's Chevy. This is a 6.3 liter from the shops of Mike Lozano and the Lozano brothers. And the heads on this engine are the same that the Lozano brothers provide to Daytona 500 winner Dale Jarrett, his Chevy running NASCAR Winston Cup. So that is something these cars have in common, both making around 700 horsepower when not burdened by the restrictor plate that Dale, of course, has to run at Talladega and Daytona. And that new Spice bodywork, 2 seconds a lap difference in testing at Talladega.
David bouncing through the infield there, boy, you can give you an idea of just how bumpy it is here. They had quite a bit of break-up. One of the things that caused the problem with the track here was, you remember they had that incredible snowstorm here when they were supposed to have their opening NASCAR round, and of course they left some trucks parked on the infield.
Leader in the pits. Bob Wallach comes to a stop in the Yost Racing pits. Let's get down to Rick DeBrule.
We talked about the fact that the pit stops are now longer as a result, about 10 seconds longer, and it's going to help this team because they're going through a driver change. It takes an extra few seconds to do it properly. As a result, rather than having to rush it in 16 seconds and do something wrong, they get that extra 10 seconds to get these guys in the car. And in this case, they've got Ronnie Meixner. This is his first GTP start. He's getting into the car right now, getting all buckled in. They've gone to about 25, 26 seconds. Now they're up to 30 seconds. They've got them buckled in. They're still putting fuel in the car. The Porsche on pit row. Everything is ready. The fuel is out. Now they're just waiting to roll them away. Meixner almost stalls it. He does indeed stall it. The guys get behind the car. They're going to try and push it out. He's wasted 40 seconds. He's got it restarted, and now he's back onto the track after 45, maybe 50 seconds.
Well, Ronnie Meixner may be out, but David Tennyson, meanwhile, is back in. Problems right there for Tennyson, once voted the most improved driver in the Camel GT ranks a couple of seasons ago. The team looks a little bit confused about what exactly to do. Now the engine cover will come off.
That's disappointing because they were running pretty strong.
David Tennyson running very strong, but he is not running at all right now, and he will lose precious time on the racetrack. Meanwhile, up front, P.J. Jones is back where he was just a few minutes ago on the point of the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. Stay with us. Less than an hour remains in the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. There's a look at your top 5. P.J. Jones in the Toyota, followed by teammate Juan Fangio. The Porsche of Manuel Reuter, followed by the similar car of Ronnie Meixner. Tim McAdam, the leader in the Camel Lights class, followed by David Tennyson, Parker Johnstone, Bob Earl, Jim Pace, and Giampiero Moretti. Now we want to remind you, coming up Tuesday, April 20th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific here on ESPN, the first game of our coverage of the National Hockey League Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll feature Mario Lemieux and the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins. We will televise up to 37 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs, including each and every minute of the Stanley Cup finals. Watch for Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins Tuesday, April 20th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Pacific here on ESPN. The leader in the race here in Atlanta, P.J. Jones, and the number 98 Toyota Eagle Mark III. Bob Wallach has climbed out of his Porsche in favor of Ronnie Meixner, and he's standing by now with Rick DeBrule.
And this is the happiest I've seen Bob Wallach when you're not in the lead. You're really happy about the way this car is performing today.
Well, I'm happy to be back in the U.S., happy to be racing here, and happy to drive a very good car, which, as I said before, is a 10-year-old car and still competitive. Shows how good Porsche is when they start doing things. Unfortunately, at the moment, when racing is concerned, they don't do anything.
Now, in terms of this weekend, you've had a battle going on with PJ throughout much of the weekend, kind of trading places and getting in each other's way. Were you doing that again this afternoon?
Well, not really. I didn't see him today because he sort of pissed over us. But during practice, I mean, it was a misunderstanding. I mean, he was behind me. I'd seen him. And he thought because he's driving the best car and because he's won 2 or 3 races that everybody should stop and let him by. I mean, he has to learn what racing is all about and find a way around people.
Like Bob Wallach.
Bob Wallach owns a Jaguar dealership in Strasbourg, France. Once asked Tom Walkinshaw if he could drive for his Jaguar team in IMSA Camel GT Racing and got very upset when the answer was no. Now he's in the Porsche that has helped make him famous. Boy, I remember when he and A.J. Foyt got together in the 24 Hours of Daytona. I believe it was you, David, that wandered right in there when Bob was at his steamiest to ask him about putting A.J. in the car.
Mr. A.J. Foyt was the word he used to describe his co-driver. They won the race anyway in the end, so I mean they're all smiles now. But Bob Wallach, a very tough competitor, a bit of an Iron Man. He used to ski for France, and is a real keen cyclist. You know, keeps fit by cycling miles through the French countryside. And as you said earlier, he's put on some sterling displays in some of these IMSA races in uncharacteristically hot weather for him.
Now, the question we're all wondering at this point is whether that 2mm choke down on the air restrictor leading air into the engines of these Toyotas is going to improve their fuel mileage. They've already made one stop. The question is whether they will need another one. They stopped with just about an hour to go in the race. I would guess if they don't have to make another stop, they certainly won't want to. The question is whether they might need to before this race is over. Keep in mind at the Miami Grand Prix, P.J. Jones right there stopped a little too early, had to come in for a splash and go, and it cost him the race.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, if they really are 70 horsepower down, one would assume that they'd use less fuel because power is fuel. But it may not be as efficient as it was before, which would burn it up again. So I guess, again, like a lot of things this afternoon, the race itself is the way they're going to have to find out.
Just saw P.J. Jones has set fast lap of the race. He set fast lap in each of the preceding 3 races this year. Nobody in the IMSA Camel GT history has ever swept fast lap in every race. The record right now is 10 fast laps in 14 races, shared by Jeff Brabham and the late Peter Gregg. Right now, P.J. Jones has 3 in the bank and another one possible today.
Well, Bob Wallach may not be smiling quite so much when he finds out that Ronnie Mixner's running about 6 seconds a lap slower than Manuel Reuter in the 7 car, the 6 car that is, of Ronnie Mixner and Bob Wallach. He's running about 6 seconds off the pace and has just been passed by the Bell Moretti Momo car again. So he's slipping back into the clutches now, in fact, of young Parker Johnstone in the Camel Light division.
While that battle goes on now, we've deployed our pit forces. Marty Reed is standing by in the Toyota pits with more on their fuel consumption situation. Marty?
Well, we talked to Team Toyota. If it stays green for the rest of the race, they must stop one more time. So they're sort of hoping one of 2 things. Either PJ keeps running away and hiding, or if they do end up with the yellow, well, then they can get enough laps that they can just go to the distance. I don't know about Porsche at the other end. Rick DeBrule has that answer.
Marty, the word from the Porsche camp is they are already planning a second stop for a couple of reasons, both for fuel and the fact that they want to put Bob Wallach in that car to give him that sprint towards the end. So Porsche already planning on a second stop.
All right, so Porsche is going to have to make up ground and hope that something forces the Toyota team into the pits before this one is over. Average race speed thus far, 121.450 miles an hour.
That's a pretty good lick around here because there's some very slow corners. Turn 1 is pretty slow, turn 2 is extremely slow, and turn 9 is very, very slow. So they must be legging it around the rest of the course to maintain an average speed like that, including pit stops, of course.
These are the quickest road racing machines in North America. The all-enveloping bodywork allows them to develop the aerodynamic downforce that allows them to corner at incredible G-loads and speeds. 4 times last year, Camel GT cars appeared at the same tracks that Indy cars do and produced quicker lap times for pole position. There's the leader in the Camel Lights class, Tim McAdam, Vail, Colorado. Keep in mind, he has a mandatory pit stop to make. The Camel Lights cars, because they are not turbocharged, can go farther on a full 100 liters of fuel. So Tim McAdam will come in, they'll put Jim Downing in the car, fill it up, and Jim will be on his way in the chassis that he helped design and certainly built.
It'll be interesting to see how the next driver combo get on. Dan Marvin will take over from Parker Johnstone, and of course Downing will take over from Tim McAdam.
No yellows at all in the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. A look from down in the chicane where Richard Petty ended his Winston Cup career in a ball of smoke and flame, as I recall. Tim McAdam is the distributor for Bel Ray Oils here in the United States. He sponsors the car. He has no slouch behind the wheel. I recall at the Grand Prix of San Diego in Del Mar to wind up last year, Tim had all kinds of problems with the car. He spun it, I think, 3 times in the race, as I recall. We had some fun with Tim at his expense. But he is one world-class race driver and showing it here today, leading the way in the Camel Lights class here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Certainly having a great run here this afternoon. There's no doubt about it. Holding off Parker Johnstone relatively easy. In fact, he's pulled away again now. The gap is now up to about 5 seconds. It was down to about 2.5. So they're seesawing their way through traffic. But at the moment, Tim McAdam's got a good, strong, healthy lead on this Camel Light division.
Only car officially out of the race thus far, Wayne Taylor's Danka Chevrolet GTP. Tim McAdam continues to make his way around, but up front in the overall standings, it's a Toyota 1-2, P.J. Jones and Juan Fangio, with Porsches coming up behind. We'll be back. South of Atlanta in Hampton, Georgia, Atlanta Motor Speedway, America's newest road course, has its nationwide debut here on ESPN with the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta, being led right now by the Toyota of P.J. Jones from Rolling Hills, California. P.J. rocketing around at an average speed of over 121 miles an hour to lead the overall running. Meanwhile, down in the pits now, here comes the Camel Lights machine in the foreground of Parker Johnstone, who will have to make a driver change. Marty Reed is standing by.
Parker Johnstone brings the Acura to a halt. Dan Marvin swings around and opens the door. Now, what's interesting is despite the good season so far that Parker has had, he finds himself 3rd in the driver's points behind Tim McAdam and Jim Downing. Now, those guys have 61 and 60 points, respectively. Parker is 15 points behind the leader, and so this is a critical stop. It's now the pressure on Dan Marvin to do well to bring this car home. They are still chasing that number 63 car, and that car should be pitting within about 5 laps. Getting a little hung up on the water hose. They finally get that taken care of, and it looks like they're down and underway.
Dan Marvin from Berkeley, California takes over, a man who spent many years starring in Toyota Atlantic action on the West Coast. Camel Lights cars were once thought to be the future of the IMSA Camel GT, but no longer. As IMSA's Camel GT series continues its evolution, this is one of the prototypes of the future. A new formula called World Sports Cars. This is the machine being shared by Fermin Vilez, Andy Evans, and Francois Migaud. In fact, the World Sports Cars are the subject of this week's Quaker State Track Fact. Let's learn more about the World Sports Cars. Track Facts are brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil.
When they pulled the cover off the new Riley and Scott design last Thursday, it was not just another unveiling. It was a glimpse into the future, both for IMSA and Wayne Taylor.
When the World Sports Car was first announced and I'd seen some of the cars out there, I lost a lot of interest because to me they just looked like Sports 2000s and they weren't going as fast as a Camel Light. I really had no interest. And then, of course, when Bob came up with this design, you know, I got really excited.
You see, Wayne is not just another driver. He is now the president of Danka Motorsports. Tired of searching for a team in need of a driver, he created one and brought a new sponsor, Danka, into the sport as well.
You know, it's a 3-year package, and I think at least it keeps me racing rather than being like a lot of drivers walking around the pit lane looking for a drive. You know, I've got to do a lot of the management business and drive the car, but I think at the end of the day it keeps me in racing longer than most of the other guys walking around.
And in fact, Danka Motorsports is actually a partner on the Riley and Scott World Sports Car program with his first design model, and indicated that next year's cars will most definitely not be prototypes with the top chopped off.
The rear structure, the rear downforce of the car is somewhat based on the Formula One Indy car, but they cannot seal the tire to the flat bottom, but we can. So we feel we'll be able to actually be more efficient than those particular designs.
And his new car may actually breed a new driving style as well.
This car with the flat sides, oddly enough, in yaw, when the driver gets sideways, it'll produce even more downforce. So it'll be interesting. It may require a little bit of driver training to know if he can, you know, set the rear end out and pick up more downforce. I haven't told Wayne that yet.
Well, with a guy like Bob Riley involved, with all of his experience in Trans Am, Indy cars, what have you, that should be one exciting World Sports Car next year. There'll be 2 years of transition in which you can run a World Sports Car, but 1995, those will be the backbone of the Camel GT Series. Now let's get down to the pit lane and Marty Reed.
Parker, Tim McAdam said before the race that we really can't keep up with these Acuras down the straightaway, but yet you guys have been chasing them most of the race.
Well, the Acura Comtech car ran great. I made a mistake early on in the race, and I spun coming up onto the banking, which then changed our strategy. Instead of sitting behind Tim and letting him pace the race, it put us in a position to try to catch him. I fell back about 9 seconds, made it up, hit traffic, fell back, caught up, hit traffic, fell back. And much to the credit of Goodyear, I really punished the tires. I just about wore them out, and the car just went faster and faster and faster. I was actually really disappointed because they called me in a couple laps early just to make sure we had enough fuel and Dan had enough time to qualify for driver's points. And I wanted to stay out there. My goal was to catch and pass him. I just didn't quite do it.
Well, the job's now up to Dan Marvin, guys.
Well, it could be in worse hands than that. You've got to have respect for Dan Marvin, who helped Parker Johnstone to his second straight class title last year, keeping the car clean on the racetrack and in the lead more often than not. But that is not where they find themselves right now.
They have a pretty serious deficit at the moment, getting on for a lap, in fact. But, of course, the McAdam car has to stop yet for its pit stop. But as we've been seeing, the pit stops are taking around about 27 seconds. Then by the time you come in and go out, say it's 45, so they're got a long way to go to catch up.
There's the leader in class, Tim McAdam. Let's take a look at a field summary now. Jones, Fangio, Reuter, Meixner, and Tennyson. Then our Camel Lights cars make their appearance. Tim McAdam, followed by Dan Marvin. Bob Shader has taken over for Bob Earl. Giampiero Moretti still in the Nissan. And there you see the rest of the field. About 45 minutes remaining. And now the leader in Camel Lights is pitting. This is Tim McAdam bringing it in to give over to Jim Downing. Rick DeBrule is there.
And in fact, I was just talking with the crew chief a moment ago. I was saying, when is the car going to come in? He said, you know, it's really up to the driver. We're already in our fuel window. We look up, and suddenly there the car was. They're bringing him in. Tim McAdam getting out of the car. Jim Downing getting in. They, too, have that fuel restrictor, and this helps in these pit stops. They don't have to worry about the fuel. In fact, the fuel has always gone in quicker than the drivers. Now it's a case of the fuel is going to go in about the same speed. But the driver change is what complicates this particular pit stop. It's something so simple. You plug in one thing, you get a guy in the seat, you put the seat in, but that's where so many things can go wrong in this division because there's required that you have two tires. It's because of the fact you've got two drivers. Once again, it's just a complication. We understand they're going to be adding a 10-second penalty to this team for something that's gone wrong. Perhaps an extra man over the pit wall. We'll keep an eye on that as well. Apparently, the fueler did not have his goggles on, and that was the problem. As a result, they're putting him in place for another 10 seconds, and this could be the thing. In fact, I'm seeing the number 49 car on the pit straightaway going by. We're sending Jim Downing out. Now we're going to have a race, gentlemen.
Absolutely. You saw Jim Downing get in the car wearing that fiberglass collar that restricts helmet movement. Jim has been a pioneer in working up this system with his brother-in-law Bob Hubbard from Michigan State University. An extra safety incentive involved in Camel GT racing. Almost a full minute on that pit stop. We'll be back to see how it all turns out. Back at Atlanta Motor Speedway and the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta, your leader, the number 98 Toyota of P.J. Jones. 3 cars remain on the lead lap. The 2 Toyotas of Jones and Fangio and the Porsche of Manuel Reuter. Free agency has changed the face of the NFL, and that will make the draft more important than ever. And ESPN will have 6.5 hours of live coverage of the NFL draft coming your way Sunday, April 25th, beginning at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, live from New York City. Chris Berman will host along with Joe Theismann, Mel Kiper, former Buffalo Bills general manager Bill Polian. Tom Jackson will be at Patriots headquarters for the number 1 pick. We'll also have cameras and reporters at the Cowboys, Buccaneers, Bears, Eagles, at Tampa Bay, Dallas, you name it. We will have wall-to-wall coverage of the slightly spheroid ball beginning next Sunday at noon Eastern Time here on ESPN. New leaders in the Camel Lights category here in the Grand Prix of Atlanta. That is the Acura of Parker Johnstone, now being driven by Dan Marvin. Jim Downing has taken over for Tim McAdam in the second place car. We'll give you a look back at the gap. Some 7 seconds, not that machine. There comes Jim Downing, the 3-time former class champion. Meanwhile, Tim McAdam is out, and Rick DeBrule is standing by with him.
Well, Tim McAdam, before the race, you were singing his sob story about not being fast enough. You were just going to wait for the Acuras to break. You sure didn't look like you were waiting for anything out there.
No, I really wasn't, Rick. I mean, I just thought right from the start if I could jump it and get in the lead right away, and the car was working real well, that I could, get Parker to start thinking about things, and that's exactly what happened.
Now the leader is in the pits. P.J. Jones will not make a driver change. He will go all the way, as will Juan Fangio. New rubber on all around. Second stop for P.J. This was all he will need to go the rest of the way. Marty Reed is standing by.
Remember, these 2 guys, P.J. Jones leads his teammate Juan Manuel Fangio by 15 points, and this stop goes a total of 24 seconds, and he's back underway.
So something of a surprising pit stop for P.J. Jones with lots of time remaining in this race. And the new leader will be Juan Fangio, the number 99. Now we'll see if he will make a pit stop. There you see Juan, who was on the infield portion, about to go around the patriotically painted World Sports Car of Andy Evans, Francois Migaud, and Fermin Velez, a former C2 world champion, driving that car. There's a look at Juan. Fresh off a win, a 12-hour race for touring cars in Bathurst, Australia. A meteoric career he has had. He first began driving in street cars, essentially street stock cars, where he caught the eye of Dan Gurney at the Miami Grand Prix a few years ago. Also drove Toyotas in their celebrated celebrity race at Long Beach, did well there. Dan Gurney offered him a drive in what was then his IMSA GTO equipe, and then Fangio joined the Gurney All-American Racers Toyota team in GTP racing. They struggled for a while with some outmoded cars. Then they came upon the Toyota Eagle Mark III, designed and built by All-American Racers. Might have won in their debut at Laguna Seca, California, but for a pit infraction that caused Juan Fangio to be held at the pit exit. Otherwise, he might have won that race, and then he certainly did win his second start in the car at Portland, Oregon, here on ESPN.
Certainly had a great career. Got a bit out of shape there, didn't he? And it has certainly proven to be an incredibly effective car, this. And obviously Dan Gurney is one of the people that will feel the new rule changes for the World Sports Car Championship with the flat bottom cars and the less aerodynamics and less expensive vehicles. They're going to feel it pretty keenly, but Dan realizes that the sport needs more than just a couple of cars in it to make it very successful, and I think he's willing to go along with as much change as he possibly can. Whether his engine man, Drino Miller, is prepared to go along with another downsize of that restrictor, I don't know.
Juan Fangio into the pits, as was his teammate P.J. Jones, Marty Reed. Here comes Juan.
Well, the Toyota comes to a stop. We've got our clock running down here. Now, remember, the time to beat is 24 seconds, and every second that the crew can give them, and I'm sure they've calculated just how much they need, so we won't see the full flow of the full tank, rather, and the tires look great, so again, no problem there as they come off, but the new ones go on. Again, it's 20 seconds, so he's picked up 4 seconds in the pit, and here comes the battle.
And he suddenly slows, big burst of smoke from the back of the car.
He got held up there by the pit exit guy, which is somewhat uncalled for, considering the car they were holding him up for was his teammate,
who swept past and into the race lead. So P.J. Jones leads, and we have at least the possibility of a teammate battle, an intra-squad battle for the title. There is Dan Gurney walking away, no doubt mumbling the name of the guy running the traffic light at the end of the pit lane. In fact, Dan Gurney is headed that way. Now, perhaps he just thought better of it. There are several options, says Dan Gurney, that Toyota might take in the future. They could develop a world sports car chassis and abandon all of the hard work they put into this machine. They could decide to some other form of racing, perhaps Indy cars. And of course, they could decide to not go racing at all, but one would certainly hope that that is not too realistic an option for Toyota. There's a look at PJ. He's been doing the Jones family proud recently. Son Page, of course, very active in single-seater racing in the United States, says he wants to go Winston Cup racing as well. Now Dan's going to go down there and talk to the official anyhow.
Uh-oh, the official rolling his sleeves up.
I didn't think it was safe. I'm saying, it was not safe in my opinion for the boat to go on at that time. It's not safe for 99 to leave at the same time 98 was coming. In my opinion. Safety is primary, Dan.
Are you satisfied?
No, I'm knowledgeable.
I think that's going to be about as most we'll get out of him on this one. I can tell you're steaming.
Well, you know, we can talk about show business, we can talk about everything, but sooner or later you got to be able to race, right? That's what he's doing. Both of our guys are racing their hearts out. And if that's not what the people like, then you can call me Gustav.
Dan Gurney.
Well, I guess Dan Gurney about said it all there.
He's pretty hot.
Let the boys race. And I'm certain that both of his drivers would be happy to hear Dan Gurney say it. Each guy needs an equal chance at winning. That includes in the pit lane. We'll be back for more from Atlanta Motor Speedway. Back at Atlanta Motor Speedway, what we thought might come about has indeed. The 98 of P.J. Jones with the 99 of defending IMSA Camel GT champion Juan Fangio just behind. It's an intra-squad Toyota battle for the victory coming up on slower traffic now.
And Juan Fangio is mad. I guess he feels just like Dan, that he should have been let out. Look at him go to that track. Oh, P.J.
That was Fangio.
Fangio went off the track there. Something flew off his car.
No, a sign flew in the air. He clipped one of those Toyota signs on the infield. I can't believe he kept it straight.
Because it was raining all day yesterday. That grass is not very friendly to race cars.
Absolutely. It's lumpier than Candlestick Park during the NFL playoffs. And there you see the gap. Now, here's another look. Watch the car on the right. Fangio decides to go down. First he goes left, then right, off onto the grass.
Well onto the grass. Well onto the grass. Boy, oh boy.
Shades of Sebring when he went bounding over the grass part of the infield last year. My goodness. All-terrain racing at its most exciting here in Atlanta.
Now they're coming down to the turn 2, and there's another phalanx of traffic in front of them as well as they come into the turn 2.
Meanwhile, the number 6 Porsche has pitted. Ronnie Meixner is out of the car. Bob Wallach is back into it, and he might be a factor before we're done here.
We've got a tremendous race for the lead of the Camel Lights division going through, and our two leaders are just about to catch up with Parker Johnston and Jim Downing, who are absolutely locked in combat of their own, so they aren't going to be about to give away for anything.
Now the race leader is beginning to catch up to this battle, so we'll have two battles going on at once. There's the Camel Lights battle. On the left is Dan Marvin. On the right is Jim Downing. And coming up swiftly behind them, it'll happen on the banking, so these GTP Toyotas should have no problem getting around the slower Camel Lights cars.
That's disappointing, isn't it? I was hoping they'd catch him up in the infield.
Do it on the infield, right.
Whoa!
Now, once again, Juan Fangio with a decision to make. Meanwhile, Jim Downing is going to challenge Dan Marvin. Yes, indeed. They go plunging off that 24-degree banking down to the infield.
Whoa! Fangio goes low again. And now both going to lap the Momo car, the 30 car.
Oh, careful. Now they're both going to try the same side by side. Did they touch?
Fangio's got him boxed in.
Keep in mind, these guys are teammates. They have to go share the same truck at the end of the day.
Well, Fangio got him well and truly boxed in behind Derek Bell there in the 30 car in the Nissan that used to be such a conquering car. And look at the way those two guys just absolutely blew it up. This is the car that could do no wrong for 2 years. There's our new leader in Camel Lights again.
Let's take another look at this battle between the Toyotas. This is on the backstretch. Now,
oh, they did touch.
Big contact there. P.J. Jones trying to find a lane to the inside underneath Derek Bell in the Nissan. And the 99 of Juan Fangio moves up to pin him against the slower cars they go around. Wow.
Fangio there giving PJ some of that practice he's going to need if he's going to do Winston Stock Car next week. Just getting him used to it.
Oh, my.
They move. Of course, those cars are covered in chin spoilers and all sorts of trick aerodynamic aids, which don't really like that sort of slamming around, I would have thought. Stone like crows. I mean, this is all pretty desperate stuff.
I wonder if Dan Gurney is still smiling after that.
Probably is, actually.
Yeah, I guess he's a racer after all. He's probably enjoying this.
Yeah, he probably is.
There is PJ diving down onto the infield. Juan Fangio opened up a little bit of a lead there. Fangio's been having the worst of it all weekend. He went through 2 motors as the team struggled to catch up with that 2mm further restriction on the airflow into the turbocharger and into the engine. And now he's got the lead. Marty Reed has more from the pit lane.
Dan Gurney, I just want to ask you, are you getting enough racing now?
Well, yeah, plenty.
You know they touched back there.
I know, yeah, I know it.
We didn't have a shot at you, but
they're racing. That's it. I mean, they're 2 really first-class guys in first-class cars, I'd say.
And the chains are off, guys. They can go.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick timeout while Juan Fangio has taken the advantage. Plenty of racing still to come from Atlanta Motor Speedway. A great debut for this new road racing facility at the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. Back at Atlanta Motor Speedway, where P.J. Jones and Juan Fangio continue to battle it out for the lead in the Toyota Grand Prix of Atlanta. But take a look at what just happened moments ago. The number 40 Ford Alba, being shared by Neil Jamison, John Jones, and Bill Klubine, spun on the racetrack. Watch the right side of your screen. He spun off the track, came back on. There he is at the bottom. Here comes Juan Fangio, and that is how close they got. Here comes P.J. Jones.
Everybody absolutely sweating bricks there, I tell you, including the driver of the 40 car. We're not quite sure who's in at the moment.
I don't think Juan ever lifted. He just rocketed right by within inches of that car.
Well, one of those things, when the guy's spinning like that, you never know when the car starts to spin. They can suddenly take on a different tack and go off in a different way. There really is not a lot of point in lifting. Kind of best to aim at the car and almost guarantee that by the time you get there, it'll be gone.
We're told that's
sometimes doesn't work.
Told that's Neil Jamison from Ontario, Canada, an investment banker doing some prototype racing for the first time. And there's the number 10 machine, Ed DeLong and Bobby Brown.
Pampers shares.
Right. Woof. Now Juan Fangio pulls away. Meanwhile, the battle in Camel Lights is heating up once again. There is Jim Downing, who came up from behind and took Dan Marvin while they were being